Now, we know that in the last week, the Nigerian market has picked up by at least 213 basis points. So it's been doing really well over the last few days. Just your sense of how the market may perform in the week ahead?
Well, I think the market has performed very well over the last few days on the back of the asset management company bill that has just been passed to law by the president of Nigeria. But I think it's still very early in the day to see whether this momentum will be sustained. And I'm saying this because we've seen this happen before. You know, the market had the information that the bill was going to be passed into law then, and there was a flurry of activities that made the market, you know, to appreciate in terms of the closing numbers. But for me, I think we have just started the process, and that process is going to take us through a set-up process whereby, you know, the asset management company that will take care of all these toxic assets will have to have a form, in the sense that they have to appoint a managing director, they have to put the structure in place, the operational manual, how the valuations will be conducted. And until these things are put in place, it's still early in the day. I think what we have seen in the last few days is a reaction to what I want to consider a positive development. But as we move into the days and weeks ahead, I foresee a little moderation in the bullish trend that we are witnessing now. But we are likely to see a more sustainable growth going forward to the end of the year as we begin to put structures in place that effectuates the takeoff of the asset management company.
All right, so moderation going forward, but to what extent will the so-called issues of intrigue at the NSE impact on the momentum we've seen in the last week? We're told of an NSE succession crisis, a secret meeting being held this afternoon, and issues about the Director General having to resign but not tendering a resignation, and in general, the NSE coming under a lot of scrutiny. Your views?
Yeah, I think the NSA has come under a lot of scrutiny in the last few months. But what is important is the fact that the Director General of the NSA has made a public statement to the extent that she will resign latest by November. And I think this was also re-emphasized at the last stakeholders meeting, where the Minister of Finance was present, the Director of the Stock Exchange was present, the Director of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and other stakeholders in the system. And I was part of that meeting, and that public declaration was made. I think I would rather be a little cautious here, because I will not want to characterize this as a crisis. Rather, I will want to see it as a process that has generated a lot of intense public attention and regulatory attention. And to that extent, considering what the market has been through in the last 2-3 years, and getting to know that, you know, the director of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is about resigning, and a new director taking over. And mind you, the Securities and Exchange Commission has shown keen interest in this process. And to that extent, they have said that they want to be involved in every process that will lead to the emergence of a new Director General. And I think adverts were also placed to ensure that there is a lot of transparency about this whole process. So as far as we're concerned, I think it's an issue of intense public attention. And I think if the process that is being put in place and the consultants they are working with are able to put together a very, you know, transparent and objective process, I think we will end up with a very successful transition. But I see it as a transition challenge, not as a crisis.
But Wale, I mean, obviously it is something that investors would be concerned about, because some of the problems at the NSE have affected its performance. For instance, audited results weren't released, and issues like that. So there is a need for confidence building, especially within the context of the banking reforms we're talking about, and a lot of issues about deepening the capital markets in Nigeria. At the moment, the Nigerian Stock Exchange clearly dominated by banking stocks, but we're seeing some kind of an equities revival, as it were, and it's led to, especially in the 2006-2007 era, it's led to the listing of many SMEs, but at the moment we're told that investors are holding back with the listing of new companies. Why is that?
Well, I think you said a lot of things, but I'll start from the last one. The reason why investors are holding back is because for them, about 2-3 years ago, a lot of them tried to come to the market using the platform of the private placement with the intention of ultimately listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. But the market crashed at a time, and that created a lot of anxiety on the part of institutional investors and retail investors. And let's put it this way, we have 3 classes of investors. We have the institutional, we have the retail, and we have the international. What we've seen in the last 1 year is a return of the international investors. And the institutionals have shown very good percentage of activities, but we've not seen the retail investors come back to the market. And it's because they still have not been able to build enough confidence in the market as to, in terms of regulatory transparency, in terms of disclosure requirements. And I think all these things are being worked on. Presently, the market is substantially dominated by the banking stocks. I think going into the future, we are likely to see a reduction in the percentage that the banking stocks constitute on our index. And the reason is this. In the last few days, the Minister of Finance, assisted by other stakeholders in the industry, they've been having sessions. I know my association, our Association of Issuing Houses, made a presentation on how we can encourage a lot of these, big companies in the telecom sector, in the oil and gas, so that we can encourage them to come to the market. And by so doing, we will continue to moderate the relative dominance of the banking sector in the index of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And I do not belong to the school of thought that will compel them to do that. I think we should continue to encourage them so that we don't ruffle feathers.